Hey, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to Social Studies 10. Hopefully, you guys actually watched the entire video, as it really does tie everything in this lesson together. Okay? We're building where we left off last time, which was examining the Allies going on the offensive. We looked at Dieppe, D-Day, and eventually the liberation of Europe. Okay? As the Allies were making their way through Europe, a lot of the soldiers on the ground discovered these camps, and some of them didn't know what they were. What these camps were, that they're going to learn, will be part of the Nazis' plans to eliminate all the Jews in the world. Right? It would be concentration camps, which were part of the Holocaust, or as the Nazis are going to be calling it, the final solution. And that's going to be our focus of today's lesson in terms of how did this come about and the impact of it. It's important to note that even though a lot of the soldiers who were coming across these camps may not have known about it, a lot of people in the hierarchy of the military knew what was happening. As usual, there'll be some extra resources that I've been giving to you if you wanted to get this going more in depth. If you are not going to watch any of them, I say at least watch two of them. Liberation of one of the camps is from a clip from Band of Brothers. Here's a quick summary of the Hitler's rise to power, anti-Semitism, and how it came to play. And this is probably the most significant one. It is a 7-part series, short clips, but thematically tie into different phases of the Holocaust, and a lot of my lessons are tied around that. The focus of this lesson, as I kind of put in the first slide, is the Holocaust, the development of the final solution, the answer to the Nazis' Jewish question. At least from their point of view, they felt something had to be done with it. To better summarize and capture what we'll be studying, I'm actually going to show you guys a clip this time. Hopefully the audio works. Okay? This is from a Holocaust historian.
The Holocaust was the Nazis' attempt to murder the Jewish people, first in Europe and ultimately everywhere in the world if they could, based on their racist anti-Semitic ideology, which saw the Jews as an ultimate evil. The project the Nazis undertook regarding the Jews began in 1933 in their search for a solution to the problem that they saw regarding the Jews, and progressed through various stages and developments right until the end of World War II in 1945.
That was from a video series from the Institute on Holocaust Research. 7-part series. I do implore you, if you want to get the full effect, to click on this link. It should be in the notes, and watch the series. Before we get started, I want you guys to also think about this question. A lot of people think two debates about the development of the Holocaust. Some think it's intentionalist, as in Hitler planned this from day one. Other thing is more functionalist, a response to what happened in the war. By the end of this lesson, hopefully you would develop your own opinion. If you don't know, that's fair enough. A lot of historians still debate this. Trying to connect it to some of the things that we studied last week. As you guys remember, after D-Day, the Allies were able to get a foothold in Europe, and they started making their way to east, towards Germany. As the Allies were approaching Germany, or into Germany, they started coming across camps like this. Okay? This is a clip, if you can, I think it's one of the first links, if you can, click and watch it. It's about Americans who come across a camp, and they're confused about it. And if you do watch that, I do actually expect you guys to pause if you can, and click on the link. A lot of people think once they look at clips like that or any footage, or even look at some of the images, is like, how did it get this far? How did things get so bad? What is driving this hatred of the Jews by the Nazis? Well, it all ties into the idea of anti-Semitism, hostility towards or prejudice against Jews, Judaism. Right? The origins of anti-Semitism go back all the way to ancient Rome, right? Where Judaism was seen as a different religion. A lot of people were ostracized because of that. They're seen as the other. For the longest time, they became a target and scapegoat for people in power, as a way to identify a group that they think that is challenging them. Right? Over time, this viewpoint of Jewish people hasn't changed to some people. Okay. So flash forward from ancient Rome all the way to the 1930s. So people of Jewish faith often has been seen as scapegoats. When things are going bad, they're often targeted. Okay, they're blamed for different things that have happened in the past. And we're going to go a little bit more depth in this in just a moment. If you're still confused on that, or seeing maybe some people ask, why do we have to study for this? This happened years ago. Well, if you've been paying attention to the news in the last few years, there's been a rise in anti-Semitic behavior or people promoting Nazi ideology. Okay, these are just a few years ago. Right? There was also rallies in the States, a lot of with Nazi imagery. Right? Right? Even in Vancouver, there's been sightings of this as well. Right? This is a few years old, but still relevant. Hey, going back to the lesson. All right, so I said that. Sorry. Because of anti-Semitism, a lot of people often would blame or target people of Jewish faith when things got bad. Anti-Semitism increases during poor economic times. If you pay attention to what we studied, has there been a period of poor economic time? Yes, Great Depression. Okay? Not all of it, but part of Hitler's rise in power was that he blamed the misfortunes of Germany after First World War on many different groups. Maybe the Weimar Republic, communists, but he also started to target Jews as well, saying that they were part of the problem as well. So as he rose in power, so did anti-Semitism in Germany, and under his rule as well. So he made Jewish people kind of the scapegoat. You know, they're partially why the economy is terrible. They're partially why they lost the war. Right? And I said, you know, during the Depression, this did not help much. Okay, during this time too, as Nazi Party kind of grew in popularity, there was an increase in propaganda posters depicting Jews as being kind of evil and they're the ones the source of Germany's problems. Okay. All right, so fast forward to 1933. Hitler's actually in power now. He starts instituting laws and starts promoting his master race theory. Right? That, you know, that people who do not fit his definition of Aryan do not really fit into his plans for Germany. Right? For example, Jews were considered non-Aryans, and they were forbidden from owning land and participating in different things in Germany's government and economy. For example, a year after that, Jewish business started getting boycotted. Okay. Keep in mind, too, there are camps being built, but right now these are concentration camps for political prisoners. Some of them are going to be refashioned for the Holocaust. Okay. Still relatively early on, 1934, camps were just used for political prisoners. New laws are going to be created to further marginalize the Jewish people in Germany and other countries under their control. Right? In order to enforce these new laws that Nazi Germany and Hitler was putting forth, was the creation of new police force, SA or SS. These are elite guards and kind of enforcement officers to help enforce these new laws. So times went by, more and more laws being created to push Jews farther into the margins of German society. Right? Jews are denied health insurance, banned from unions, they're forbidden from joining the army. Right? And what most people usually target as when things turned even worse for the Jewish people was the Nuremberg laws. That even though Jews may have been, German citizens before this, once this is put forth, Jews no longer are citizens, therefore have no rights. And being Jewish is no longer a matter of religion, it's actually part of their blood, so it doesn't matter if you convert or not. Jews are now banned from different jobs. Now they're forced to register the businesses, identify as Jews. Yeah, they have a J pass put on your passport. So once again, now they're being pushed to the marginalized parts of the economy and business, citizenship. Now they're actually being systematically categorized in who they are. Right? A lot of this came to a head, right? 1938, the Kristallnacht, where a lot of Jewish businesses all throughout Germany were targeted for violence, which was kind of unofficially supported by the government. Right. So, for many people, this was kind of the last straw, at least in terms of Jews living in Germany. They realized things are not going to be getting better, and that they had to leave. Soon after this, right, a lot of Jews started trying to flee Europe, right, especially from Germany and some of the bordering areas. Keep in mind, the war actually hasn't started yet. Okay? This is around 1938, early 1939, before the actual war started. Okay? A lot of people were trying to flee Germany. One of the most famous ships was the St. Louis, which the Canadian government refused. Nowadays, Canada has a good reputation of being, very loving of refugees and stuff, but during the war, we weren't. If you look at some of the numbers, Canada actually had one of the lowest amount of Jewish refugees allowed in. Okay. Even though anti-Semitism was very extreme in Nazi Germany, it still exists in other parts of other parts of the world, including Canada. Okay? Right? So I said, just look at some of these numbers. It kind of speaks for themselves. All right. So now we have all these Jews trying to flee Germany, but they're not. A lot of them aren't making their way out. Right? And things are going to get worse soon. Okay, not just the Jews of Germany, but the Jews of the areas in which Nazi Germany is going to invade. Okay, the war breaks out. Nazi Germany invades Poland. Outbreak of the war. Okay, now all the territory that the Nazis have taken over are also inhabited by Jewish people. So even more Jewish people are now under Nazi control. Right? The Jews that were living in Poland, they were going to be treated very harshly. For example, all their belongings are going to be taken away. A lot of them are going to be isolated to certain parts of town, often near the railroads. And a lot of them were expected to wear a yellow star on their jackets to identify who they were. Right? Right. At this point, concentration camps, right, though the ultimate use of them have not been really made public, are being created in Poland. Right. Right. And all the other areas that the Nazis are going to be taking over, they're going to be using a similar method that they used in Poland, which is the creation of ghettos. Okay. So what they did is that they took all the Jewish people from these areas and isolated into one particular area of cities or towns. These were called ghettos. Okay, usually 100,000 of people crammed in just a few blocks. Okay, once again, they're not being marched to the camp yet. They're being kind of put together in one area of town, so they're easier to control and concentrated in one area. These are called the ghettos. Okay? In these ghettos, conditions are very, very poor, very dirty, a lack of sanitation. A lot of people would die just from disease or from starvation. All right. Also, at this phase of in 1940, a lot of Jews were being moved out of the ghettos or within the ghetto themselves, being moved to forced labor camps, in which they'll be put to manual labor. A lot of them would die just from working to death. So far, once again, we have kind of the isolation of Jews under Nazi control, put into ghettos in one geographical area, a lot of them now being moved to labor camps. Meanwhile, all this is happening in Auschwitz, what's going to become the biggest concentration camp. They're starting to practice executing prisoners of war. And the same strategy is going to be used to do with the Jews that are under Nazi control. All right. Hold on. Spring of 1941, things get even worse for the Jewish people. Okay, so at this point, Nazi Germany has actually invaded the Soviet Union. If you guys remember, at least during the first phase of that war, they're actually very successful, and they now occupied more area of the Soviet Union and now had even more Jewish people under their control. So from the Nazis' point of view, they have all these Jews under their control, which they're seen as being undesirable. They're holding them up in all these ghettos. A new technique or strategy is going to be required. Right? So 1942, in January, a Wannsee Conference is called, and in this meeting of a lot of the Nazi military leadership come up with what they refer to as the final solution, which is decide that all Jews under German control have to be sent to their deaths in death camps. All right. So what's going to happen is that Jews from all over Europe that are under Nazi control are going to be sent to death camps. Right? They start creating death camps. Old concentration camps are being kind of revamped, and these camps are now no longer just for imprisonment. These camps are going to be used for execution. Okay? Jews throughout Europe are going to be sent to these death camps in cattle cars or by trains. Okay? This is some imagery that you might have seen. A lot of people ask, well, why did the Jews go on? Well, a lot of them didn't quite know where they're going to. Right? A lot of these are coming from the ghettos, so a lot of them thought they're maybe just getting sent to a labor camp. Right? Obviously hard labor, very dangerous, but at least they'd still be alive. It's not soon until they reach their destination they realize where they're going. Right? At the camp, they're often some of them are going to be in housing conditions like this. Right? These are pictures of the camps once they were soon to be liberated, but we're not quite there yet. When they actually got to these camps, okay, they're going to be systematically executed. Right? They're going to be divided into different barracks and often separated from their family, and then they're going to start marching them towards crematoriums. This became the most common way in which Jews were executed at these camps, mostly because of the efficiency of them. Okay, they send these people into these gas chambers, they die, and they just cremate the bodies. Okay? Gas chamber is going to be the most common one. Right. So at this point, people are saying, well, with all these deaths, execution, why weren't the Jews fighting back? Well, there was some resistance. Okay. In Poland, we have the ghetto uprising. Okay, where within the ghettos themselves, they started rebelling against the Nazis. With not too much success. Okay, some areas when they were invaded by the Nazis refused to actually give it to Jewish people. Some countries actually tried to help Jews escape, and in France they actually hid children in convents, Jewish children, so the Nazis would not get them. Okay, all right. The question also too is, what were the Allies doing? Well, the Allies did know about Auschwitz, the biggest and most famous death camp, but they didn't do anything. Okay? Part of the reason was they thought they couldn't quite reach it. They thought, they had to focus on other things. Regardless, they knew about it, and no plans were really put into place. Okay? At this point, the Holocaust is in kind of a full swing. At some point, they can actually execute and cremate up to 14,000. Most killed this year, about 14,000. 14,000 a day. It was almost a high efficiency that they can be. Right? When they're done, instead of kind of burning the bodies afterwards, sometimes the bodies are starting to be just put into pits like this. But however, liberation is soon at hand. Soon, after the Battle of Stalingrad, where the Soviets were coming towards Germany from the east, after D-Day, we had the Allies coming from the west. Okay, Allies start taking back Europe, and they start as the Germans started to flee. They started finding these camps. Okay? And the whole reality of the concentration camps, the Holocaust, started to be revealed to the public. Right? As the Allies were getting too close to these camps, a lot of the prison guards realized what was going to happen. Okay, some of the Nazi guards actually tried to execute many people before the Allies showed up, but in the end, most of them abandoned the camps and kind of ran away. The most famous, I said, death camp was Auschwitz, and the Soviet Union actually was the one who liberated. Right? It was estimated that up to 1.5 million Jews were actually executed there. You can see when they were eventually freed, a lot of them were happy, but a lot of them still had a very harsh recovery ahead of them. Alright, this is where we find ourselves now. Okay, eventually the war would come to an end. Allies would free and liberate the camps, and the war would come to an end, at least in Europe. But what happened, which is a little bit different than what that's done before, is that something called the Nuremberg trials were put on, in which they charged the people that were in charge of the camps, a lot of the German military, who actually put on trial for their role in this. Okay, a lot of people said that, they were just following orders, but a lot of Nazi leaders were actually officially charged and executed, showing that just following orders isn't good enough. You have to make a choice. Right? A lot of these guards and leaders decided to go through with the final solution, regardless of their own beliefs. Right? In the end, over 6 million of Europe's 11 million Jews were dead. Right? If you guys remember, my original question partially was, why do we study the Holocaust? Hopefully you see the significance and importance of this. The second part has to do with the debate in terms of the purpose of it. Was it planned from the beginning, or was it developed over time? Most people think it's a combination of both. Hitler did have his beliefs. As the war went on, he found a way to, fulfill his dream. Right. In terms of the assignment that goes with it, you guys are going to have this one page. I'm sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. Thank you guys for paying attention up to this point. I know it's kind of heavy, and I may have dipped a little bit in energy. It's kind of a heavy subject to kind of go over. All right. So as for the assignment, you're gonna have 2 tasks. First page, straight out of the workbook, the readings. You guys have done these before. The second part, which is going to be a little bit more challenging, okay? This is a little self-reflection assignment here, and this is going to be the bulk of it. The next couple pages, this page and this page. All right, first thing I'm going to ask you guys to do is that I'm going to have you guys look up and watch this documentary. Okay? You can use this link or just type in I'm Still Here, Real Diaries of Young People. So what happens is this is a documentary that follows a bunch of teenagers who lived during the Second World War and the Holocaust. Right? Most of the files have been recreated from primary sources, old journals or interviews for those who survived. And it kind of goes through their lives and how some of them survived and some of them didn't. So if you can, please follow one of these links. It will bring you to this documentary. It's about 40 minutes. Take the time and please watch it. I'm going to ask you guys to do a few things. One is I want you guys to respond to the experience of 3 of these people. Okay, I think we have 10 people here. You just need to follow 3 of their stories. I suggest turning on the closed captionings if you can. And I want you to write down maybe 1 or 2 things about each write down at least 2 facts about each individual. You don't need to do them all. Just pick 3 that maybe speaks to you. You want to talk about what their experience was, if they survived, what did they have to do. Okay? So if you click on that link, you're going to have a documentary that follows all these characters, real people, and their experiences. I'll write down 3 notes in terms of what their life was and what they experienced. Okay? So you have 10 options, you just need to do 3 of them. This is meant to be a little self-reflection check that hopefully maybe you can identify with them. The most famous person in which teenager in which we have records of their experience was probably Anne Frank. This is very similar sources here. Okay. Second part here is I want you guys to analyze one of these quotes. Please choose 2 quotes. You have 4 of them. You just need to do 2. Your reflection, kind of, what do you think about these quotes by them? And last year is pretty self-explanatory. It's kind of a post-documentary kind of reflection. Well, thank you for all your time, right? For those who actually made it through this way far. I appreciate it. Need help or concern, please let me know. Thank you.